Printing with plants is going to be our first activity. This is a process I use a lot in my own work, and it's one that I really enjoy using because it kind of connects you with nature. You get out and about, you're always gathering bits of foliage when you're on your walks in parks or through woodlands. It's just a really great activity for sort of taking notice of your environment and connecting you with the seasons. And I find that my work changes depending on the seasons as well. Certainly it's great for your well-being because it's about noticing the details in your environment and sort of focusing on kind of the small aspects of the natural world. So all of those things are great for your well-being. And then coupled, of course, with being creative, which we all know can really enhance kind of your positive feelings. So here I've got a range of dried leaves, pressed stems, as well as fresh items, some from the garden, some herbs, petals, pieces from woodland. So a nice range of different foliages that will give me lots of different effects. Some seed heads as well, eucalyptus and poppy. So things that are going to help me make patterns as well as things that will give me lovely prints. What I'm going to start by doing is creating almost like a sampler, something a bit like this. So the sampler, a bit like in sewing where you demonstrate all the different stitches, this is going to be a sampler where we can see all the different marks and patterns that we can make using plants and foliage. So to begin with, I'm going to get some ink rollered out on my tray. Now I've already got a little bit of this block printing ink rollered out, but I'm going to put about a 20p sized blob out, and then using horizontal and vertical motion, I'm just going to spread it onto my tray. Remember somebody saying you don't want it to sound sticky, you want it to sound like it's hissing, and that's how you know you've got the right consistency. You'll notice your roller has a little ledge on the back of it, so you can turn it round, face up, and it'll not get ink on your table. For this process, I'm going to apply the ink to my foliage with a brush or a sponge because it's all quite delicate. And the sponge or brush also means that you can make sure that the ink is evenly applied amongst all the little veins and lumps and bumps that you'll find on your foliage. So what I'm doing is I'm loosening the ink slightly with some water, dipping into my water, spreading into the ink. You can apply your ink to your foliage with your roller, but sometimes if the foliage is particularly fragile, you'll find that it can be a little bit hard. So I tend to use a brush. And what I'm going to demonstrate first of is printing with your foliage onto linen, mainly because I mainly work on linen and fabric. So it's a nice way to start. And then I'll also show using some of the papers. So I'm going to start off just showing you apply a nice layer to your foliage. So I've got a nice fern here, nice even layer. You want it to glisten, you don't want it to be too thick. Equally, you don't want it to be too thin. But don't worry too much. These creating this sort of sampler is almost like experimenting, it's playing. Seeing what works, what patterns you like, what forms you like. Do you like really dark, heavy, thick kind of ink for your prints? Do you prefer lighter, more sort of ghost-like marks? There's lots of different things you can consider. So I've placed my foliage ink side down onto my linen, and I should have said underneath my linen I've put a little bit of kitchen roll just to protect the table. Fold your kitchen roll in half, holding the bottom of your stem, and then nice firm even pressure with your hand, using basically your fingertips. Even pressure. I like to use my hand for this form of printmaking because you can actually see or feel the texture of the leaf through the kitchen roll, so it's really good kind of intuitive process. But you can also use your spoon, back of your spoon, and of course if you've got a barron you can use your barron. Firm even pressure. You might also want to switch hands round, so I'm holding it at the top now and just making sure I get some ink transferred from those bottom fronds of the fern. If your leaf moves and you get kind of like a sort of a blurring effect, that's okay. That's all part of the process. You might find that you like that, or you might find that that's something you want to avoid. It really is a process that's up to you. You'll also find you get a lovely mark on your kitchen roll, so make sure you save that, because you can make sort of nice collages with lots of different papers and fabrics. Lifting it up, we've got a beautiful fern print. So I'll show you a couple of other foliages. I'll show you a fresh leaf. So I'll show you the fresh leaf, applying it with the roller. You'll find different types of leaf will give you different effects. And you'll find that some leaves, the ink almost sticks to it really effectively. And other foliage, the ink doesn't sit so well on it. So I've coated my foliage with a nice even layer. Again, face down. Now this is where I could use a bit of fabric, so I will. I'll use my little bit of calico here, because I might get a bit of a print on this, so I might get like almost 2 for 1. I do usually just use kitchen roll, but for the purposes of this demonstration I'll show you. So again, holding it in place, I'm going to use the spoon and I'm just going to go over it. Now, of course, if you're using a printing press, you'd be rolling the foliage and your fabric through your press. But because we're printing from home, we're printing by hand. If I'm using the Baron, again, like so, and my hand. So I'm really going to focus on making sure I get that stem printed. Lift it up. Lovely, got a lovely mark on the calico. That's really, really nice. I like the way the ink is sort of faded, sort of a gradient to it. So that's really nice. And then we'll see what we've got on the linen. Lovely, something similar. So that's another kind of way that you can get 2 for the price of 1. Show you some grass, and you'll notice that every so often I'm just loosening up my ink with a bit of water because it's started to dry. So the grass, again, dabbing it on with the brush, nice even cover. Pop it down. Kitchen roll again. You can keep reusing your pieces of kitchen roll until you've sort of used all sides and angles. And again, holding it in place and smoothing down, making sure that I get nice, firm, even pressure. And you'll really start to find patterns that you like, marks that you like, and you can even in this process of creating a little sampler start to find compositions that you like. So do you like kind of almost like field notes, individual pieces together? Do you naturally sort of want to create a picture? Do you like just the patterns that can be left? Lovely. So our grass offers us something different again. I'll show the Hydrangea Flower because working with flowers is very different to working with leaves. They tend to be a little bit more delicate. So I'm going to get my Hydrangea Flower and I'm just going to paint the leaves with the ink. You can already see you're getting nice little veins and marks on that petal. Now, I tend to just use my fingers, but you may find, oh look, it's nice on the back and the front. But you may find that you want to use a pair of tweezers because I will start to get mucky fingers. Kitchen roll down. I'm always looking at my kitchen roll to make sure that I've still got nice clean areas before I move on to my next sheet. And we're just rubbing gently, but with firm, even pressure over each petal. And I would usually try and use fresh flowers rather than dried because you get more uses out of a fresh flower than a dried flower. So actually it's lovely on your kitchen roll as well. So do try and save some of those if you want to make like a little collage scrapbook. And there we go. Beautiful on your linen as well. I also talked a little bit about making patterns with some of your natural foliages. So you'll find some of your foliages lend themselves to making patterns. So for example, I've got some yarrow here, which is dried. And then I've also got some leaves from some cosmos. This is fresh, and you'll see that they just make really nice patterns, almost seaweed-like. And that's actually another, another material that you can try printing with is seaweed. I'm going to move on to a bit of fresh kitchen roll here. Smooth, even strokes. Sometimes even use my hand balled up into a fist. So this is going to be a lovely pattern. It's not so much going to be a representation of the whole leaf, but it will be a nice pattern. Let's see. They're lovely. So it's sort of almost kind of a bit wild and slightly more free. So what I'll do now is show you a bit of pattern making with the likes of a poppy seed head. So I've wetted the ink again to loosen it, and I'm applying that with the brush. The poppy seed head, you're almost using like a rubber stamp. So I'm going to put it down. If I just put it down like that, I get almost like a nice sunburst. Reapply. But you can almost put it down and roll it. And it gives you similar but slightly different effect. I was putting quite a lot of pressure onto that when I stamped it down. Eucalyptus will be different again. It's not as flat, so it's sort of a bumpier surface. So we'll see what we get from our eucalyptus. Again, I'm going to press down initially, and then I'm going to roll ever so slightly. Yeah, got some nice wee dots there. What other things give you a nice pattern? You can do a really nice little circular print with an acorn cup. That would be quite fiddly to use, but it could be quite effective. I think I'll maybe just demonstrate the umbilifer stem, because it's always very effective. So again, applying evenly. What I'll maybe do is I'll just show you the sponge. The sponge I would usually wet slightly first, squeeze off the excess, dab into my ink, and then I would stipple it. But you really don't want it too wet. Now this is very fragile, so you will find that wee bits might come off, which is why the sponge and the brush really are the most effective ways of applying the ink that I find. But do try the roller as well. Lovely. I'm running out of space on my sampler, so we'll maybe come in, not worry too much about covering up the eucalyptus mark. This is actually a great way to now find out about how layers work as well, so you might want to think about layering up your prints. Now, with something like this, because it's woodier and it's thicker, you're going to want to put lots of pressure on. And again, I really do prefer working with my hand, because I can feel all the ridges and different parts of the plant. Okay, lifting it up, you see you get those lovely swooping stems as well. So our sampler is an excellent way to start to think about patterns, shapes, texture. But as well as experimenting with creating those patterns and textures, you can also create pictures with your foliage. So that's something you might want to start think about doing as you're creating your sampler. So to demonstrate that very quickly, I will get one of my printing plates. So I'll take my A5 Perspex. Sometimes what I might do is I might tape it down. So put masking tape in the corners, or even a wee bit of blue tack underneath to just fix it in its place. but because I'm doing lots of demonstrations today, I'll probably not do too much of that. So what you can do is, I'm going to put out a bit more ink here, another 20p sized blob, and roller that out. And again, looking for it to hiss. Sponge up. So what I'm going to do is a leaf print onto some of my paper, and then I'm going to create almost like a picture on this to print. So I haven't shown you a leaf print onto the paper yet, so I'm going to take one of the ferns again, because they are very nice, or maybe a leaf actually. A leaf. Go with a leaf. Nice sort of autumnal leaf that has been dried and pressed. So again, just showing you, you can apply with the roller. You need to be very careful because it is delicate. So I'm going to sort of stipple with the leaf with the brush. Okay. And I'm going to set it down on top of my plate. Then I'm going to take a little bit of the cartridge paper, the like of which you would get in your printer. It's nice and thin. I'm going to set it down, and I will take a little bit of kitchen roll. I don't think there's going to be any of it seeping out, but just to kind of smooth it over to start. Just because I've got inky fingers. That up. You can already see the veins starting to come through, so I know I'm getting some transfer all down the stem. Smoothing over. Till you can see all those veins of the leaf coming through. Lift it up, holding the leaf in place. And then we've got a lovely leaf print. A little bit of movement, but that's okay. Actually quite adds to it. And of course, you've got a little bit of a print left on your plate. So sometimes you can see what it might look like if you printed it. Now it'll be much more sort of faint and a bit more ghostly, but it's nice to see what you can get from that. It's quite nice too. To clean my plate, I'm very quickly just going to give it a quick wipe down. I'm very quickly going to look at just maybe doing a quick picture. So I'm going to roller some ink onto my plate. Fairly even coverage. I quite like it to be patchy, but using horizontal and vertical strokes, you can make sure that it's an even coverage if that's what you prefer. But I'm going to make sure that it's a bit patchy in places because I quite like working that way. And I'm still using this water-based ink, not the oil-based ink. And I'm maybe going to put down my rowan leaf. I'll put down some of this cosmos leaf that does already have some ink on it. And I'll put down an oak leaf. So I'm sort of creating almost like a little picture in a way. Now, of course, what will happen here when I put my paper on top of that, I'm going to get white where those leaves are because they've got no ink on them. I might pick up a little bit of ink from the cosmos, but I'm mainly going to get white. So I'll get black background and then the white. And for this, I will use a little bit of tissue paper, just so you can see what it's like with the tissue paper. So I'm going to lay my tissue paper down and I'm going to smooth all over. And the thing about this type of mono printing is that you get lots of options. So when you lift up your paper, what's left on your plate, you can also create a print with. Smoothing it all over. Maybe I'll use the Baron to get a little bit of extra weight, but I definitely don't want the Baron to rip my tissue paper. So I'm being very careful as I smooth around. Something like the Cosmos, you want to get into all those grooves between the stems. I'm really rubbing it in and around each leaf of the rowan and the oak. And we'll maybe start from the bottom and peel up. You're going to get some nice dramatic shapes. There we are. And there you go. So you've got some really nice dramatic shapes there. What you can now do is flip them round, because you've now got a bit of ink on your oak leaf and on your rowan leaf. So you can replace them. I'm going to add a bit more to that oak leaf. Just a little bit, not too much. I'm going to lift this guy up as well. He's great. Put him here. And put the oak leaf here. So now you're getting the shadowy marks of where the leaves have been, as well as now creating an image using the ink that's on the stems. Tissue paper again. Down it goes. And rubbing again to create a nice picture that's going to pick up. Now I'm demonstrating with tissue paper. You can of course do this with your fabric as well. And your fabric will give you those nice effects as well. The linen does hold the colour and the shape and the pattern differently to paper. And you'll find each of your papers will give you a slightly different effect. I think this is going to be nice. There we go. So it's different again, but really effective. If you can see that, all the shapes and textures that we've achieved. So that's really just an introduction to printing with foliage, showing you how to do it onto fabric and then a little bit with your tissue paper. It's really a bit of trial and error, and it is an experiment. So I would say play around, play with the different types of paper and fabric that you're working with to see what you can achieve.